Imagine a moonless night over the Egyptian desert. Not the ordinary darkness of empty wilderness, but a kind of darkness with weight pressing against your chest, like a tombstone just sealed shut. Wind slips through ancient stone steps, carrying the scent of dry dust, fragrant resin, and a coldness that feels wrong cold, like the breath of a room that has been locked for thousands of years. You are walking alone. No night birds, no insects. Only the sound of sand grinding against itself, as if someone were sharpening an invisible blade. And then, from far away at the boundary, where sand meets shadow, you see a figure standing perfectly still. A gatekeeper. A jackal's head, ears raised, as if it hears something you haven't even thought yet. Its eyes do not look at your face. They look straight into what you've hidden deepest. Shame, selfishness, the moments you betrayed yourself. The biggest question suddenly rises in your throat, sharp as a needle and heavy as lead. When you die, who truly decides whether you rest or are swallowed forever? Not kings, not priests, not glittering gods in the sky, but this gatekeeper, Anubis, guardian of the ancient roads, the one who stands between order and chaos, the hand that steadies the scales of truth in the underworld. And the most terrifying part is not that he will condemn you. The most terrifying part is that he won't say anything at all. He will simply place you before a ritual no one can negotiate with, no one can buy, and no one can run from. If you've ever thought of death as a door, then for the ancient Egyptians, death was an entire corridor, a tangled network of roots full of traps, passwords, and watchers. The soul was not allowed to simply step out of the body and drift away like smoke. The soul had to pass through. It had to learn the rules of a world that no longer belongs to the sun. And in that world, Anubis is not merely a god. He is the final signpost, the controller of the gate, the enforcer, the judge, and sometimes the silent guide. They call him the Lord of the Cemetery, the Watcher of Graves, the one who can smell death from afar. But if you look closer, Anubis is something deeper, an idea of justice you cannot escape, a reminder that there are ancient roads buried by sand, still waiting for you to step onto them. Go back to the time before you die, when you are still breathing, still hearing your own heartbeat. In Egypt, death was not only loss, it was a project, a construction that had to be built to standard according to ritual, step by step. The body was not an empty shell. It was an anchor, so the soul could recognize itself, so your name would not dissolve into nothingness. If the body failed, the soul would stray. If the name was forgotten, the soul would vanish. That is why they mummified, not out of morbid obsession, but because they believed existence requires structure, requires order, requires a map. And Anubis appears precisely where humans touch that boundary, where living hands prepare a body for a journey no one can ever truly describe. Inside embalming workshops, among the smell of matron salt, pine resin, and spices, Anubis's image is not decoration. It is a kind of protection. Embalmers wore a jackal-headed mask to turn themselves into the god's instrument, to say that they were not acting on personal will, but following the laws of the underworld. Picture it: a dark room, an oil lamp burning low, human shadows stretched long across the walls. On a stone table lies a motionless body. Hands move with the care of someone handling a priceless relic. Everything happens quietly, almost sacredly. There is no room for haste, because one wrong step could push the soul into a blind journey, unable to find the correct door. And in the Egyptian imagination, Anubis stands somewhere in the corner of the darkness, never interfering, ever pitying only, ensuring the procedure is respected. He protects the road, meaning he protects the order of that road. But the ancient road Anubis guards does not end with preserving the body. It continues deeper underground into what is called the Underworld, a land of darkness, subterranean rivers, and gates after gates after gates. When the soul leaves the body, it does not immediately meet a modern heaven or hell. It meets a labyrinth. It meets questions. It meets its own memories, turned into trials. And at the center of it all is a ritual so famous that many think they understand it when they've only touched its surface: the weighing of the heart. See it like a courtroom with no gavel, a vast hall with a high ceiling, lit by a cold light like moonlight underwater. Gods sit in silence like statues. Before you stands a great scale. On one side lies the heart of the dead, not a physical organ, but the symbol of the self, of memory, of every choice you made while alive. On the other side is a feather so light a breath could lift it, the feather of order and truth. And Anubis stands there, one hand on the beam of the scale, eyes neither angry nor pleased. He resembles a market scalekeeper, except what he weighs is not merchandise, but the worth of an entire human life. What's strange is that this judgment doesn't resemble the familiar model of punitive religion. It doesn't ask if you are afraid. It asks if you are true. If the heart is heavier than the feather, it means you carry too much deception, too much guilt, too much you refuse to release. And what awaits you is not a hellfire pit, but a creature that devours the soul, an erasure. No more memory, no more name, no more chance. A second death, and this time it is forever. If the heart is light, you move on into the field of reeds, a peaceful place like an ideal version of life, where you farm, sail, and reunite with loved ones, no longer chased by time. In the moment the scale trembles, Anubis is the one whose hand touches your fate. And the most terrifying thing there is silence. No long defense, no lawyer, no loopholes. You face only yourself. Now pause and look deeper into the question. Why Anubis? Why not a thunder god or a war god? Because Anubis belongs to the place humans fear most, where boundaries dissolve. The cemetery lies at the desert's edge, where the city ends, where life is no longer certain. Jackals live at that edge too, roaming between dunes and graves, creatures of the border, feeding on what is left behind. The Egyptians saw jackals digging near tombs and understood something brutally practical. Death must be protected. If not, it will be violated. If not, it will be desecrated. From that very human fear, they created the image of a jackal-headed god, but instead of making him a destroyer, they made him a guardian. As if to say, we know death is terrifying, so we place the most terrifying creature in charge of protecting it. There is another layer more subtle. Anubis does not only guard the dead so they can rest, he also guards the living so they can endure. Because when ritual exists, fear has a shape. When the road has a map, chaos is held back. You grieve a loved one, but you also have things to do. Words to recite, incense to burn, linen to wrap, names to call. Those acts do not save the dead in a modern sense, but they save the living. They make loss feel less like falling into a black hole and more like a journey with a path. And Anubis, as the guide, becomes the symbol of humanity trying to build order inside what cannot be controlled. People often connect Anubis with Osiris, the king of the underworld. Some versions say Anubis helped embalm Osiris after Osiris was murdered and dismembered. Imagine that as the origin story of funerary craft. A god betrayed, a body torn apart, the world's order suddenly shattered. And in that shattering, Anubis appears as the one who does the brutal but necessary work gathering, arranging, wrapping, and transforming tragedy into ritual. He turns shapeless death into ordered death. And from there, he becomes the patron of every embalming rite, every route a soul must travel. But there is something in Egyptian tradition that people today mention far less a forgotten ritual in the popular imagination, the opening of the mouth. It sounds gruesome, but its meaning is profound. The Egyptians believed that after death, you still need to breathe, to speak, to eat in the next world. So they used a ritual instrument to touch the mouth and eyes of a mummy or a statue, as if awakening the senses. The ritual was like unlocking a system, allowing the soul to interact with a new world. Without opening the mouth, you enter death like someone sealed shut, unable to call a name, unable to plead, unable to recognize the road. And who protects these actions? Anubis, the one standing between flesh and spirit, ensuring the doors of the senses do not slam shut forever. Through a modern lens, the entire system can look like a security program. The body is preserved like a data vault. The name is carved like a password. Spells function like access codes. Underworld gates resemble layers of authentication. And Anubis is the administrator at the entry point. It may sound cold, but this is exactly how the Egyptians turned fear into structure. When they could not defeat death, they designed a process to face it. And what makes Anubis unforgettable is not that he is a monster or a hero, but that he is the seriousness of ritual itself. He doesn't promise to save you through pity. He promises the rules will not be twisted. He protects the robe meaning. He protects the meaning of walking it correctly. What other forgotten rites are there? Amulets placed on the body, spells spoken in exact rhythm, drawings on coffins like maps. A scarab placed on the chest, symbol of rebirth, like a warning to the heart. Be silent in the court. Do not betray your owner by confessing too much. Everyday tools placed beside the dead, not because the dead will use them exactly as before, but because the next world is imagined as an ordered continuation of this one. In every detail, you can feel Anubis, not as a character standing center stage, but as an invisible standard. Do it right, so you can go right. Now pull Anubis out of the sand and set him beside us, people living in a modern age where cemeteries no longer sit at the city's edge in the same way, where death is pushed away from view by hospitals, paperwork, and constant busyness. We may no longer mummify. We may no longer recite spells or place amulets, but we still carry the same fear as the ancient Egyptians, that death doesn't merely end life, it erases meaning. What terrifies people is not only the stopping of breath, it is vanishing as if you never existed. Your name no longer spoken, your photos drifting on a hard drive until they're deleted, your life story no longer told by anyone. That is why Anubis becomes a timeless symbol. He represents the question, what remains after you disappear? And the Egyptian answer is, what is prepared, what is remembered, what is placed correctly. This is why funerary rituals across every culture share the same core. They are an act of reordering the world after an explosion. When someone dies, the structure of family, community, and memory cracks. Ritual is how we mend it. And Anubis, as keeper of ritual, is the image of humanity trying to keep the world from collapsing. Think of the weighing of the heart as a psychological image. A heavy heart is a heart carrying too much unresolved. Apologies never spoken. Good things you should have done, but didn't. Moments you knew you were wrong and kept going anyway. If you believe in this symbol, then the most frightening thing is not being judged by someone else. It is knowing your own heart is heavy and doing nothing to make it lighter. Anubis is not the creator of guilt. He is only the one who weighs. In that sense, Anubis is like a mirror. You may hate the mirror because it tells the truth, but you cannot demand the mirror lie. In modern culture, we talk about justice, law, morality. But these things are often dragged back and forth by interests, by power, by crowds. What exhausts people is the feeling that no court is truly fair, that no scale is untouched by a hand pressing down. That's why imagining Anubis becomes quietly comforting. Somewhere in the human mind, we want to believe there is a standard you cannot buy, a place where the scale is not biased, a gatekeeper who doesn't care if you are famous or unknown, rich or poor, loved or hated. There is only one simple and ruthless question. How did you live? But be careful. That simplicity is also what makes Anubis an obsession. Because if justice is absolute, then no one escapes. No one can claim they have never betrayed, never been selfish, never harmed. And so Anubis is not only god of the dead, he is god of self-interrogation, a symbol that makes the living feel seen through. There is one more comparison in the age of data. Today, we are building new tombs, not of stone, but of information. Photos, messages, voices, videos, journals, everything is stored. A person dies, but their account remains. Their memories still pop up in recommendations. Sometimes the living are yanked backward by a single notification. We live in a world where death doesn't close cleanly. It leaks through screens. In that context, Anubis gains another meaning, because Anubis is the protector of boundaries. He guards the gate so the two worlds do not blend into chaos. If the boundary isn't kept, the living find no peace, the dead find no rest, and memory becomes a wandering ghost. And perhaps that is our own forgotten ritual, the ritual of closure. Not erasing, but placing things properly. We need ways to say goodbye, to put memory into a locked drawer instead of letting it run wild through daily life. The Egyptians had linen, coffins, carved names, spoken words, and the scale. What do we have? A rushed funeral, a few status updates, a photo album, a memory with nowhere to go. In that empty space, Anubis steps in as a question. What ritual have you created for yourself to face loss so you are not devoured by chaos? Return to the old story. Picture the final moment in the weighing chamber. The scale stands still. The feather no longer trembles. Your heart lies there like something both familiar and alien. Anubis looks at the result, then silently steps aside. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't weep. He doesn't mock. Because for him, the work is not emotion, it is order. If you may go on, he opens the way. If you are erased, he simply completes the cosmic procedure. It sounds cold, but that coldness is what separates Anubis from the kind of god many expect. He is not the god of comfort. He is the god of truth. And the truth he represents, said plainly, is this: you cannot carry everything into the next world. You will be weighed. What does not belong to order will be held back, removed, or become weight that drags you down. The Egyptians told it through the heart and the feather. We tell it in different language, but the meaning is the same. A life full of rage, deceit, and hatred becomes heavy. A life that practices responsibility, love, and honesty becomes lighter. No one is perfect, but everyone understands the feeling of a heavy heart. So who is Anubis when you gather it all together? He is guardian of ancient roads, meaning he guards the human ability to pass through death without being destroyed by chaos. He is the symbol of ritual, of correct placement, of refusing to bargain with truth. He is the image of the boundary that every civilization needs, because without boundaries, everything mixes and becomes horror. He is darkness, but not meaningless darkness. He is darkness with law, and the forgotten rites of the underworld may not live only in ancient texts or reliefs carved into tomb walls. They live in a skill modern people are losing, the skill of sending off properly, the skill of placing grief inside a ritual frame so it doesn't become a wound that never stops bleeding, the skill of facing yourself like you're standing before the scale, without excuses, without decoration, the skill of living so your heart does not grow too heavy, so that when you must enter the dark corridor, you don't panic because you know you tried. Return again to that first desert night. You stand before Anubis. The wind is still cold. The sand still whispers like a secret. But now you understand, his gaze isn't meant to frighten you. It is meant to ask you the question you always avoid. If today were your last day, would your heart lie still on the scale or tremble because it is too heavy? And that question doesn't wait until you die to be answered. It is answered every day, in the small choices you think no one sees. The times you could speak truth and chose to lie. The times you could be kind and chose indifference. The times you could apologize and chose silence. Anubis is not waiting for you in some distant world. He waits at the edge of every decision. He is the gatekeeper of an ancient road that runs straight through your conscience. And maybe that is why, after thousands of years, while sand buries temples and the names of kings turn to dust, the jackal-headed figure can still make people shiver. Because deep inside every culture, American, European, anywhere, there is the same fear. The fear of being weighed, of being seen through, and having nowhere left to hide. That night, if you have the courage, you can step forward, not to beg Anubis for mercy, but to ask him for the way. Because every ancient road has two truths. It is terrifying because it is real, but it is also safe because it has order. And in a noisy modern world where everything is distorted by the crowds, voice sometimes what we need most is a silent gatekeeper to remind us that some standards do not change. Some rituals are not superstition, but the thing that keeps human beings from falling apart. A scale is waiting not in the underworld, but inside your own heart right now.